Professors, let's talk about conferences and making the most of those, especially in terms of getting your research funded. So when you go to a conference, of course, you're going to meet a lot of people, and you may be hoping to meet up with funders. Now, if you haven't planned ahead to set up some meetings with these folks, then you can feel, a little bit of pressure to get connected with them in the hallways, at a poster, after a talk, and get the most out of that interaction. So that's great attitude to have. Try to make the most of these opportunities. Now, the thing that you don't want to do in these situations is try to do everything, to cover every kind of topic in terms of, asking them about their program, telling them about the research that you do, and expecting to, again, cover all of the wonderful things that you would like to cover with them in that meeting at the conference. All you want to do, and this should take some pressure off you, at this event is to get to a commitment to a next step with this person. So a really easy way to think about this in terms of an analogy is in our personal lives, whether it would be making a new friend or dating. You're not going to ask that person that you think you may have something in common with that's maybe caught your attention. You're not going to ask that person to marry you or move in together or any kind of big steps when you first meet them. That's going to be something that may come further down the road, or maybe it won't. Time would tell, right? But what you would want to do, even again for like a new friend or someone else that you've met, possibly a new collaborator or colleague, you really are just going to want to get them to agree to talk to you again. So when you go into these conversations with the funders at conferences and similar type environments, just try to get them to agree to accept an email from you. And that next email, you'll be able to set up a time to talk to them, or you could ask them, could I email you so we could set up a time to talk about this more? That's really all you want to accomplish, and then make a note to yourself to go ahead and follow up to do that. Now, why do we not want to do more than that? Really, it's because you can easily fall into the trap of talking too much at them, really speaking at them instead of to them in a dialogue about your research. Now, it's very, very easy to do. Look, I make these videos, which are monologues, so I completely understand how easy it is to go into a monologue about something that we care about. And when you think that the other person on the other end of the line may be interested in that too, that can just make us even more excited to share about all of these wonderful things going on in our head. But the conference environment is generally not the time for that. Unless you've set up time to sit down and have an actual meeting, then that could be the time. But at these events, please also remember the asymmetry here, because you're going to be talking to a lot of people at the conference, of course, but you may only talk to 3 or 4 funders at that event, directly, people that you actually get to have a conversation with, or maybe it's just one. Whereas these folks are going to be talking to many, many more people. If you're talking to 1 or 2 funders, they're going to be talking to 50 people who are basically pitching their research ideas to them. And this makes it very hard for them to retain what you're telling them. And it also doesn't leave room for you to learn something about them. If you're talking the whole time and the other person isn't talking, you're missing that opportunity to learn. The other thing is, if you do end up having a little bit more time with them to tell them about your research, I recommend that you focus on telling them about the impact of your research. Unless there is a reason why you are going to go into a very detailed technical topic or take the conversation that way, which could be because you're at a poster and you're talking about something very technical at the poster, or a talk just wrapped up that was very, very closely related, just keeping an eye on the doggy here, that was very closely related to the topic that you want to broach. In those cases, sure, that can make sense to have that conversation. But 90% of the time, you don't want to go into a very technical topic because there's a bunch of reasons, but one of them is that in these types of environments, especially, it is going to be more difficult for them to remember you when you are in the weeds on something that they may not be that familiar with. And you don't know how familiar they are with your very, very narrow technical topic. You're not going to know that until you really talk to them more. Now, I was just thinking back of an example of this because last week I was at a conference, and it's one of the reasons I'm thinking about this, as well as talking to many folks again at a big conference this week, for example. And I prepared a 10-minute talk to talk about research impact, like a sort of extended lightning talk type thing. And I put something together for that pretty quickly. And in order to communicate that message, I give examples of people who are doing a good job and how you can approach communicating research impact. I grabbed 3 news pieces off the NSF website. And I don't have to go into everything about how I presented that here. But my point is that I was able to recall, and I can recall right now, with very little interaction with this material, and 2 of these 3 studies, well, actually all 3 of them would be outside my main area of technical expertise. One of them I have more expertise in related areas to than the other 2. But despite the fact that these are really outside my area, despite the fact that I spent very little time thinking about these topics, I didn't read the research articles, I just read the titles, and I'm able to tell you right now, okay, I can prove my point. One was about replacing proteins in the body. The other was about the a new option, a discovery of a new carbon store within the ocean. And the other was about sustainable plastics. Now, if you asked me what is the science behind each one of those impacts, okay, I don't remember that now. I remember some, vaguely it had to do with this or that, but I really could not explain to you the science because, again, I didn't really spend time. I didn't read the articles, right? But I do remember the impact. So that is my point, that you want to make sure when you have these brief conversations with people, if you go into what you do, focus on the impact because that gets really right to the point and they're going to be more likely to remember that and therefore remember you. You're going to have plenty of time to explain the how you are going to make this work from a technical standpoint. Reviewers are going to look at your plan for how you want to make this work, and they're going to give you, as you know, lots of constructive, hopefully, criticism. So, that's going to be assessed. You're not going to get the funding just because you say you can make this impact. You're going to have to demonstrate that, and you will. But a very brief conversation at a conference is not the place to get into all of this. Lastly, think about what kind of day that other person is having, and you want to be accommodating to the funders just like you would to any other person at a conference. So, if you're talking to this person and you see they're kind of looking beyond you because maybe the box lunches came out and, they're vegetarian and they're really wanting to make sure that they grab one of those vegetarian lunches, or, they're coming out of some talks and maybe they really need to use the restroom, right? So you don't want to be kind of like trapping people into these conversations at that time. You want to have these conversations. There will be time for the conversations. So what you want to do is get a commitment from this person to accept an email from you, to set up a time to talk later. If you want to give them one memorable takeaway in terms of the impact your research is having, do that. But take the pressure off yourself. You do not have to do everything at this conference. Go ahead, do what I recommend, and make a note to follow up with that and congratulate yourself that you did what you needed to do, right? And when you get back, you're going to take it from there.